Saltburn is the latest movie that has taken social media, mostly TikTok, by storm. A lot of the reactions to Saltburn have been surrounding the graphic/disturbing/sensual scenes that involve Barry Keoghan's character, Oliver. But first, what is Saltburn about? Saltburn is a British-centric movie about Oliver Quick, who slowly leeches all of the blood out of the Catton family through lying, manipulating, and girl bossing. That last one was a joke. Please, for the love of God, please don't take it seriously. Depending on where you live, it either came out in theaters in November, from what I've seen that's mostly been catered to the UK, or straight to Amazon Prime in December if you live in the US. The reason why Saltburn has grown as rapidly as it has is because people have been posting their reactions to several scenes in the movie, specifically a scene where Oliver drinks Felix's bathwater, even though there is more graphic or disturbing scenes in the movie. I don't know. Many people have said that they've gagged, felt sick, or even stopped watching the movie because of the bath scene, even though it's arguably the most important scene that introduces Oliver's actual personality. A lot of criticism people have of Saltburn is that it doesn't delve deeply enough into the classism or racism that Farley obviously experiences, that the disturbing scenes weren't necessary, or the fact that the ending completely just denotes the rest of the movie, to most of which I would have to disagree with to an extent. The idea that the main theme of Saltburn is about classism is completely misguided, as the movie is about obsessive love. Just because the difference between class and the classism between specific characters is a plot point doesn't mean it's the general theme or main idea. I would also like to point out that later on in the movie, Oliver manipulates Elizabeth into signing Saltburn over to him. This is important because after Felix's death, Oliver becomes obsessed with Saltburn itself because, duh. This can be seen as an eat the rich story. I personally think that this change is due to Oliver becoming obsessed with the next best thing. While yes, classism does play a role in how Oliver is treated, and the difference between class plays a role in why Felix takes Oliver in, that doesn't mean that a deep exploration of how classism affects people and why it affects people is going to be a takeaway lesson from the movie. Another criticism people have is that there's a lack of exploration of the racial dynamics between Farley and the rest of the characters, seeing as Farley is the only black character in Saltburn. Now, as you can see, I am white, so I obviously don't have much knowledge or authority on how classism or racism can affect a black person, especially when it comes to generational wealth. I do agree that the power imbalance between Farley and the rest of the characters could have been explored more, but I understand why it wasn't, as the movie is from Oliver's perspective, and he already knew that the Cattons more or less viewed Farley the same as they viewed Oliver. They viewed Farley as someone they needed to keep afloat rather than a family member, which is what he is. The reason we know that Oliver understands Farley is because Oliver has been outcasted his entire life, similar to how Farley has been outcasted or looked down upon by the Cattons, specifically Sir James. Now, onto the idea that the disturbing scenes weren't necessary. This is an incredibly odd thing to say. Everything that Oliver does before and while inside of Saltburn stems from his obsession with Felix, which means he will do anything to stay with Felix. The bath scene, as I said earlier, is essentially the first look we get into seeing who Oliver truly is. He wants to get as close to Felix as he possibly can, even if that means drinking his jizzy bathwater. Felix is Oliver's first love, and I know that typically holds a very bright, joyful connotation, but for Oliver and people who love like Oliver, love is an obsessive, all-or-nothing thing that consumes every part of you. This is only amplified by what he does to Felix's grave. And even though what Oliver does is wrong, and in my opinion he knows it's wrong, it's the only way he can express his deep love and sorrow for Felix and his death. Now, you may be asking yourself, if Oliver loves Felix so much, why did he have sex with Farley and Venetia? Well, I'll tell you. For Farley, it's obviously just a way for Oliver to get a hold of his phone so he can send the email/message that got Farley kicked out of Saltburn the first time. But for Venetia, it's a little more complicated, I guess is the word. In my opinion, Oliver having sex with Venetia is just another way to cement his place in Saltburn, aka cementing himself in a place where Felix lives, where Felix is around. He brings up Venetia's eating disorder as a way to make her vulnerable so he can rebuild her in a way that he knows will work, aka through sexual advances. The reason he knows, 1, about Venetia's eating disorder, and 2, that sexual reinforcement will work, is because he had a conversation with Elizabeth where she gossips about Venetia's past. We see throughout the movie how Oliver manipulates the Cattons in an effort to stay in Saltburn, which means staying near Felix. Because this section is just about the disturbing scenes, I'll talk more thoroughly about how Oliver manipulates people later on. Essentially, the disturbing scenes were incredibly necessary because they reveal Oliver's true nature before the twist even happened, which is why I don't think the twist is, well, a twist. Which leads kind of perfectly into my next point. The final criticism I'll be talking about today is the idea that it doesn't make sense for Saltburn to transition from a movie about obsession to a movie about a methodical killer, or that the translation of Oliver's obsession with Felix to his obsession with Saltburn wasn't clear enough. In my opinion, the switch from Oliver's obsession with Felix to Saltburn was incredibly obvious. The moment Felix rejects Oliver is the moment he decides to kill him. Even though it is very, 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 very heavily implied that Oliver drugs or poisoned the wine bottle before his and Felix argument, he still had control over the situation. He got to decide whether or not Felix took the wine, and he most likely knew that he would have given it to Felix since Felix had found out about Oliver's lies. From my perspective, Oliver begging Felix to understand why he lied and to love him back was a last-ditch effort for him to forgive Oliver or take him back, but it obviously didn't work. Oliver feels possessiveness over Felix, so the idea that he doesn't want him makes Oliver feel as though if he can't have Felix, then no one can. Oliver was essentially taking back the control that he felt he had lost when Felix took him to his parents and inadvertently revealed Oliver's lies. It's hard to understand why you would kill someone you love, but for Oliver, it had more to do with the fact that he'd rather lose Felix on his own terms, i.e. killing him, instead of having to deal with the reality that Felix did not want to be his friend anymore. Nothing Oliver did before the grave scene was for Saltburn. It was all for Felix. We know this because why would drinking someone's bathwater help you get their mansion? It just wouldn't. Like, what? Oliver being a methodical killer or being a killer from the start just really doesn't make any sense to me. The idea that from the start, from the get-go, Oliver wanted Saltburn or Felix dead just doesn't make sense. It's pretty clear that Oliver loved Felix in his own delusional way. The reason why Oliver punctured Felix's bike tire was so that he could meet Felix. There's no chance that Oliver would have been able to be around Felix in a natural way because he was so alienated from the rest of the school, especially Felix's friend group, due to his status of being a scholarship student. Everyone knew Felix is rich. Everyone who goes to Oxford is rich. But it's not common to live in a mansion, and I doubt most people knew just how rich Felix actually was, and Oliver is not an exception. He did not come to Saltburn or try to get invited to Saltburn for the money or for the house, but for Felix. Everything he did up until the grave scene was for Felix or his friendship with him. We see multiple times over how Oliver manipulates the entire Catton family so he gets the opportunity to stay at Saltburn longer, which means staying with Felix longer. We see how Oliver manipulates the Cattons through compliments, learning learning about their interests, sexual advances, and trying to connect one-on-one. Oliver has specific personalities for each cat, which is not an uncommon thing, at least for me. The way I act around my mom is different than how I act around my teachers, is different than how I act around my friends. So with Sir James, Oliver is docile and interested in antiques. Elizabeth, he's flirty, calm, and gossipy. Venetia, he's gentle and caring. Farley, depending on the moment, he's naive, direct, or aggressive. And for Felix, Oliver is a victim, someone who needs saving. When Felix gets mad at him for cleaning his room, Oliver comes back the next day sobbing about how his dad died, even though he was still very much alive. Oliver preys on Felix's savior complex several times because Oliver knows that's pretty much the only way Felix would be his friend. And in all honesty, how hard is it to poison or drug a wine bottle at a party like the Cattons, where it is established that there are plenty of drugs to go around? Not from a moral standpoint, because obviously normal people wouldn't kill somebody, but clearly Oliver is not normal. I mean, how hard would it be to give a depressed girl razor blades where it is established that all the men in the house have to shave? Or send an email off of a guy's phone who you just slept with, a phone that was only able to have a 4-digit password. Sir James was old, so it was very likely that he died of an illness, which is what Google says, or maybe he died of a heart attack or a stroke. Elizabeth has a respiratory disease or disorder, or maybe even lung cancer. It's not hard to get any number of respiratory disorders when you and the people around you smoke non-stop. Practically every time we see Elizabeth, she's smoking or she's around someone who is smoking. I'm not going to argue that at no point did Oliver want Saltburn, because that's just not true. I just don't believe that that's what he wanted from the start. Sure, you could believe Oliver when he says that he didn't love Felix, or that he was a planner, or that he knew exactly what he wanted from the moment he saw Felix. That would be Saltburn. But throughout the entire movie, Oliver has only ever been shown to be a manipulator and a liar. So, is Saltburn all that bad? In my opinion, no. A lot of issues people have with Saltburn are misinterpretations, or something you may not have seen from the quote-unquote right perspective. That's not to say that there aren't problems, or that it's a perfect movie. I just mean that it's supposed to be a fun movie that people have leveled unfair expectations against. Not every movie has to have a deep, meaningful message. Sometimes they're just fun. Now, I obviously can't sway someone when Saltburn just isn't their cup of tea. There's plenty of movies, books, music that I don't like but millions of other people love. I was just hoping to shed a little light on what I feel are misinterpretations. If you are interested in movies that are actually about classism or racism and the effects that those things have on people, you could watch Parasite and Get Out, respectively. There are hundreds of movies that delve into systematic issues or systematic oppression, but Saltburn just isn't one of those. So if you wanted a different perspective on Saltburn, I hope I provided that for you. If I didn't, I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm just a guy, okay? Just a girl who loves Saltburn. Okay, so I did not expect the video to go on as long as it did. I figured if I made it go faster, it would be way shorter than it actually was. But anyways, I'm just gonna talk about my drawing. I drew Barry Keoghan, obviously. I love drawing Barry Keoghan. He's so fun. He has very distinct features, so even if you don't draw him like 100% accurately, it's not difficult to try and guess. This is the 4th drawing I've done of Barry. He's just one of those people where I can just draw him with so much ease. The only thing I really struggle with is like making his nose too big, because I draw the nose first. Always, pretty much, because that's the middle of your face. So if you draw the nose first, then you can line up the eyes and the mouth correctly. But I always draw the nose too big on everyone I draw. Like Kim Taehyung from BTS, he's really easy for me to draw, but I have a really hard time getting his nose like how it is in real life. Noses are just hard to draw. I don't know. I think honestly, the hardest part about drawing or like rendering feels too pretentious, but I don't know, is the fold in people's clothes or like making the hair look layered. I really struggle with making the hair look like hair and not just like strings. Like, if you've noticed the Target box, just ignore it. That is what was holding up my phone while I was recording my drawing process for this, because I don't have a setup, I don't have a mic, I don't have like a phone stand or anything. I literally just use my phone camera with flash on, and I'm just like talking into the bottom of my phone right now. So yeah.
Like and subscribe.
Dang, you're so loud.